Oh my goodness. I am so excited today because I'm here with the lovely Susan. She has the most exciting story. She is a naval veteran, but now a completely amazing business owner. And I'm going to pick her brains today. And I want you to hear her story and be inspired by it because I think she's just fab. So, hello, Susan. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, Jess. Thank you. That was a bit of a build up. I hope I can I hope I can meet the challenge to be interesting enough. But no, thank you for having me on. It's a great place to be.
Oh no, you're so welcome. And you will be brilliant because I have done some research. I do research with all my guests, find out about you. And I'm going to be picking your brains just as much as other people can learn from it because I think I'm going to get a lot from this. So I guess the first question is for you to sort of introduce yourself and tell everybody what you do.
So I'm Susan Bonnar, and I'm the founder of the British Craft House, which is a multi-vendor platform for handmade items made in the UK. Behind the platform, we also have a community hub where we help and support the sellers and help them to grow. But my kind of journey from when I was serving in the Navy to where I am now was definitely not linear. If you write it down on paper, it's a lot of kind of accidental twists and turns along the way to get from where I was to where I am now, really.
But you joined the Navy. You were very young when you joined the Navy.
I know it's madness, isn't it? So I was 17 when I joined the Navy. In fact, my youngest child is at sixth form now, and we're talking about university applications and things. And actually, I left halfway through the upper sixth, which, if she thought that was a good idea, would slightly horrify me now, to be honest. But it was really hard to get in the Navy back then as a female. You also had completely different entry requirements to the guys, which seems outrageous now. When I joined, you needed 5 GCSEs to be a male commissioned officer, a degree to be a female commissioned officer, and even just saying that out loud, it doesn't seem kind of real. So for me, I knew that was the career I wanted. And when I was given the opportunity to join and a date that was halfway through my upper sixth, for me it was a no-brainer to kind of make the leap and to go and have some fun and adventure and travel as opposed to well, I had an unconditional place at Reading to do English literature, so that was my kind of my other option. But actually, I was really lucky that the Navy facilitated me sitting my A levels, and my best friend was super clever and went to Oxford, and she wrote out her notes every day from the lessons I was missing and posted them to me, kind of in the days before phones and being able to scan things in. And actually, I did really well in my A levels, which I think was probably because a lot of the ideas and concepts I was writing down were hers, not mine. I was just regurgitating them. So yeah, I was really lucky I actually went off to an all boys college in Portsmouth and sat my A levels whilst I was still doing my training in the Navy. So that was yeah, slightly just one of the slightly random things. But yeah, looking back now, 17 was very young to be signing my life away, really.
So yeah, and you did a fair good stint in the Navy, didn't you?
Yeah, so I mean, I did 21 and a half years. Yeah, so having joined kind of, I left school on the Friday, joined up on the Monday, and when I left, I had a husband, two children, was pregnant with my third, and yeah, and had worked all over the place and had a full career. So yeah, it's fantastic, and I am really lucky that when I walked out the door, I got a pension, which actually has been fantastic to help me be able to be quite flexible in finding exactly what I wanted to do after I left.
Yeah, and you did that really easy thing that so many people do, not me, that dual serving couple thing.
Yeah.
What effect does that have? I don't honestly, we can barely cope with one serving person in our marriage. The thought of two is just bonkers. Do you think that's what prompted you to leave?
Well, I think that I was a shift worker as an air traffic controller as well, which came with its own challenges. And My husband was serving away. I can remember when the boys were 5 and 2, he went away for 7 months, and we lived in the middle of Somerset in a lovely house that was positioned to be halfway between his job in Bristol and mine in Yeovil. And all of a sudden, he was at sea. I was still in the middle of nowhere. Just literally on my own, and yeah, so there've been some fairly bleak times, and we've lived in some really random halfway houses as well. There was one point where we lived in Salisbury, but neither of us worked there, and we communicated through sort of post-its on a fridge, and maybe we wouldn't see each other for a couple of days at a time, but it kind of worked. It worked. It was fine, and to have a little bit of space and freedom for yourself, especially before you have children, is fine. But it becomes a bit more like single parenting and trying to hold down a full-time job with your husband in a war zone. It's not perfect, not ideal conditions, I don't think.
No, and it's crazy, but it gives you a good skill set. It's really funny. We were talking before we hit record, actually, because we're getting to know each other a little bit. And you used to live down the road from me, which is just really funny. I find that really funny that we have this military sort of time scale where we all sort of overlap and yeah, could have met each other if it
Yeah,
was
no,
just
it's quite
fun.
strange, isn't it? I mean, I lived there in 1998. So it's a long time ago. I'd like to think that they'd given the quarter a lick of paint. They were all a bit sad, but they're pretty solid houses, aren't they? I mean, and I think that I quite like, obviously, as an air traffic controller, I quite like aircraft, but being right next to Northolt is not necessarily the ideal place with the planes going in and out all the time. But no, I quite like living there. I do wish I'd done more kind of London things, but no, I think it's a good place to be. The Queen used to shop at, not the Queen Mother used to shop in Waitrose in Ruislip.
Oh, well, okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
never saw her there, but apparently that was, she used to kind of, go and get her people to get her some bits and pieces if she was flying off somewhere.
Oh, that would be fascinating. Honestly, Ricelip, it's a very interesting place. But yeah, it's good fun, and that's the thing. We get to live in all these. If we choose to move, we get to live in all these sort of random places that we never would have thought we'd ever live in, and then you get to go to shop with in Waitrose with the Queen Mother.
Yeah, quite.
Yeah. So you left the Navy and as an air traffic controller, and yet now you run a very successful online business. It's fantastic. It's huge. You've got a lot of sellers.
Yeah, hundreds of sellers now. It's yeah, it's doing pretty well.
Yeah, but then it's not the most obvious way to leave the military and then start a business around helping people craft and helping people sell what they create. So how does an air traffic controller leave the military and become who you are now?
Well, I think really, so my plan was always, after my children had kind of gone to school and become more independent, that I would go back and manage an aerodrome or go back into the aviation industry. And I've kind of, so this is really my third accidental business, if you like. So when I left the Navy, I literally moved from a really lovely house, and where I'd had colleagues and a really good job, adrenaline rush, controlling airplanes was brilliant. I was literally kind of landed in a married quarter in Hampshire, didn't know anybody, didn't have a job, didn't have a wage. Children were really small. I had kind of a 7-week-old baby when we moved, and then my husband deployed. So I was literally kind of in this really dark place where I didn't know anybody, and I had lots of, oh my God, what have I done? Where did my life go? Kind of moments. But before I'd left the Navy, on another time when my husband had deployed, I had started making cards. And I used to send him something every day when he was away, however long he was away for. So whether that be just like a card or a letter or a postcard, I would send him something every day. It was just something that we always did. But with the children being so small, I found it was easier to make a card to send to him. And then it was a bit strange. It was Air Day at Yeovilton, and my friend had seen some of my cards, and she said, "Oh, I've forgotten my dad's birthday. Can you make me a card for my dad and also one for my son to give it to as his granddad?" So I took in a few for her to choose from because I thought she might think they were a bit rubbish. And from that day, people were saying, Can you make my wife a card? Can you make my daughter a card? Can you?" And literally within a couple of months, I'd sold hundreds of cards to people that I worked with, who were ordering like a personalized card without putting their cup of tea down, really. It was real low effort, and they were kind of getting huge plaudits from their family. So that was kind of something that I'd had on the back burner as a hobby. So when I was, in this kind of place, not knowing what I was going to do, I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll try and go online, because obviously I'd lost my captive audience. I'll try and go online and see if I can sell them online. And so I set up my own website. That was fine. Quite hard to get people to your own website. And this was kind of, back in 2008, when everything was quite new. And then I kind of looked at all different options for different platforms, British ones, which weren't so great. Ended up on Etsy. And on Etsy, I found lots and lots of people who were really talented, but really rubbish at social media. And so I kind of had this idea, and I suppose it harks back to the whole thing of working as a team when you're in the military, because if you don't work as a team, then you don't survive. And so I kind of gathered all of these people together, and they were all women who'd kind of had professional jobs and were now making jewelry or ceramics or whatever, and they were really quite similar to me. And so what I did is I gathered them all together, and I was quite bossy. They had to have really nice things, and they had to kind of pledge an allegiance to help promote each other, because that was my idea, that with concentric circles and people promoting each other's things on social media, that we would have a bigger audience. And so that became kind of an Etsy team called British Crafters, which was kind of my second accidental business. One of the things that I did when I was doing British Crafters, which has served me so well, was set up public facing social media pages. So the idea when I set the Facebook page up initially was that it would promote our little team of 12 people. But I suddenly realized there was a huge swathe of people that were out there, really creative, talented artists and artisans, but they just couldn't be seen. And they all wanted to be involved in the Facebook page. So as a guide, we went from kind of nothing to over 30,000 page likers, as it was back then, in a year. So we grew really, really quickly. What I realized is that with just a small team, people were going to get quite bored with seeing our work. And so I used to let people's, if I liked their work, I would let it be shared onto the page. So I would have a post every day that would say, hey, it's Thursday today, and we're going to have a nature day. If you've got something nature-like in your shop, put a link to it in the comments of this post. And really, if I like it, I'll share it. And that worked so well, but people were getting huge volumes of sales. Um, and I was just doing all of this for nothing for about a year and a half, just kind of alongside what I was doing. And it was towards the second year where I started getting emails from people saying, I need to be on your page. Last time I was on your page, I sold 20 bird baths. I only sold 4 in the 6 months before. Let me be on your page and let me pay you. And so I thought, well, okay, maybe that's a good idea. So I set up a really basic payment system initially, where people would pay me, I think, £2 for a day. And then PayPal would take their chunk, and I would do some social media, and they would make loads of sales. So that was kind of worked as a system, but I really wasn't making any money at all. So I then changed the payment system so that people booked by months. And that was kind of how British Crafters and the promotion went right until the end, where people booked for a month. And that was really successful, apart from the fact I wasn't making any money really. So at this point, they paid a flat rate for a month. But there was I think 2019 I was promoting a seller's Valentine's cards on Etsy, and she had an enormous swathe of sales, and she had to close because she literally couldn't make them fast enough. And I can remember sitting down and working out how many cards she had sold, how much money she had made, and how much commission Etsy had made. And I realized that I was the connective, I was the magic. She'd had the sales because I had done the social media. I'd connected her with my audience, and she'd paid me like a really flat fee. And so I realized then that I needed to get in on the sales loop. I needed to be closer into the transaction so that I was getting some reward for kind of the magic that I was creating. And that's when I had the idea of building a platform and just being like Etsy, because as a military air traffic controller, I've got all the skills to do that. But yeah, so that was kind of my idea, and here we are. Yeah, I mean, obviously there's lots of roller coaster rides along the way, but really it was the fact that I wasn't making any money. And there was a bit of a sliding doors moment where I'd actually applied to be a manager of a local airfield here. And it was a really good wage and I could cycle there, and it would have kind of, ticked all the boxes of the route I was supposed to be doing, if you like, after I left the Navy. And I was kind of kind of in two minds. And when I actually did get the job, it was the first job I'd interviewed for lots of years. And when I got the job, I realized I didn't want it. So that was a sliding doors for me, where I knew that I had to kind of pursue this and see if it worked, because actually the airfield thing, my skills were still going to be there in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. And so this was just something I had to pursue and see if it would work. And it did.
And it's a standalone platform now.
Yes, yeah. So it launched in 2019, and yeah, it's it's won awards, and yeah, it's brilliant. And we've got our first seller almost now at 3,000 sales, which is kind of off the scale, really. And last year the platform as a whole turned over £1 million. So that's not me getting the money, but that's divided amongst all the sales on the platform. So yeah, it's so we've really kind of come in and disrupted the market, if you like, because that's £1 million that would have been on other platforms, and that they would have got their kind of chunk. So no, I am super proud. I know it's not very British to like fly your own flag and say, I am really, really proud of what we've achieved. And it's not all been kind of flowers and champagne. There've been some kind of, fairly bleak parts, but overall it's been brilliant.
Oh, it's so brilliant and it's so innovative. What I was picking up there is how it kind of felt like you were ahead of the curve. So you were on social media early and promoting people early and recognizing that having this platform independent of Etsy and independent of Facebook and all the social media things, that you could build your business on your own ground. And I think that innovative edge is really why we're so good as social as why we're so good at digital business owners. But I think the key point that I've taken out of that I'm going to just come back to a little bit is the fact that you had this sort of closing doors moment, this, fork in the road. Do I really go for this or
Yeah.
do I go down the traditional employment? And I think the difference, I feel it with Millspo, it's not going to make me, the next Richard Branson. I'm not going to buy myself Necker Island, but it's the heart. It's the heart that you have in your business and the fact that you just need to do this stuff that's actually the key to it. And it's heartbreaking knowing that you can't do it, or knowing that you maybe didn't take that advantage. And you talk a lot about community and how important community is and the difference that you're making to British sellers. Do you think that came from the Navy, the innovative side and the community side? Do you think that's just part of how you were built? Or has it developed because of the businesses that you're running?
I think probably I like to help people. I like to in fact I did some filming yesterday for the Help to Grow scheme that the government's running. And one of the things that they were asking me about leadership style, and I was researching on the train on the way up, and there's like all these different types of leadership style that people in business will maybe tag on to one. And I was trying to work out where I fit in, because it's not something I've ever thought, right, I'm going to be this kind of leader. And actually I ended up being a transformational leader. But one of the things that is all about is making everyone in your team as empowered as they can be to be the best version of themselves that they can. And for me, with the sellers on the platform, obviously they have their own shop within it, and they can kind of do what they want within the limits of what's permitted on the website. But some people need more help than others. Some people will come in and set up their shop and make a sale on the first day. Some people will take 6 weeks to actually put a picture on. And so I think it's recognizing how people are different. And I think in the military, it is slightly different way to communicate and lead people, if you like, because everyone's a bit more similar. And so I think, for sure, on the platform we have a full range of kind of abilities to learn, and the way that people learn differently. There are some people that, they want a manual, they want to get stuck in with a highlighter when they're setting up, and they want to make sure that they've ticked all the boxes. I've got a set of videos that people can watch to help out, because lots of creative people are visual learners. And then, because we've got our Facebook hub that sits behind it, there's like a little army of people in there that are ready to help other people. So if someone says, I just can't get my images to be the right size, there'll be 10 answers within a couple of minutes, with people saying, oh, I use this app, I use this, have you tried this, have you tried that? And I think that that's something that's really really special, to have that kind of level of community supporting each other. And I think that, you can't, as the founder, I can't do everything. So I suppose I try and breed a culture where I will help anybody and everybody as much as I can, but there's only one of me in 24 hours in a day. So it's trying to, get other people to help each other. And some of the sellers that were on the platform initially, they're brilliant, and they probably know the kind of back end and the ins and outs and the bits you need to do here and there better than I do. And they freely give up their time. And yeah, it's a really, really nice kind of environment to be in, and quite special, because I think the internet can be a not very nice place. So it is really, really nice. And so locally in Hampshire, we go out sometimes for cake and coffee and stuff. And actually, we had a thing where people were saying, "Oh, that's not fair. I live in Cornwall. I want to come." And like, well, why don't you meet up with, why? So we've got like regional things where people have met up in Edinburgh, people have met up in Cornwall, and and their commonality is that they all sell on the British Craft House. And yeah, that makes me really happy.
Oh, it's just brilliant because it's so lonely. It's a lone life being an entrepreneur. It's definitely a lone life being a military partner. And then you combine the two. Oh my goodness. But yeah, community is so important, and taking advantage of what people know, because we only know so much. You're right, we only have so much time of the day. And I love that idea of community and getting stuck in. And I think it's fab. But it's all about visibility, isn't it? You twigged early on that these amazing craftspeople, these amazing makers, needed more support to just be seen. They're brilliant at what they do, but it's the knowledge gap of being out there. You spend an awful lot of money on advertising per year, and advertising is probably key to it. There's visibility of what people are doing is key to it. Are there any tips that you could give somebody that has their own product business or even a service business on how to become more visible?
So I think that ads are a bit hit and miss, to be honest. So I've tried advertising everywhere. So I charge commission on all the sales on the website, and all of the commission goes into advertising. So it kind of powers itself, which is good. But we have ads on Pinterest, on Google Shopping, but Facebook and Instagram are where the majority of our money goes now, because we just get a brilliant, brilliant return. And I've got one ad set on there that actually I need to change, really, because it says, "Come and see our brand new website," but which isn't brand new anymore. But the ad set just works so well. I think it comes in at about 40 pence a conversion, which is just off the scale, really, And so, but I can't change the wording, because if I change the wording, then it will have to go through some algorithm, and it may never work again. But I think that there's lots of free help out there for people to tap into. So for instance, I have an advisor at Facebook who helps me with the ads. They're readily available for everyone. I think I might have got them initially because I wasn't running my ads very well, and they realized I was just wasting my money. But I have this guy now, and I meet with him once a month on Zoom, and we go through my ads. If I want to set up a new campaign, he helps me, and that's all free. I also have a Pinterest advisor, also free, who helps me. Also have a person at Google who helps me. And again, Google Digital Garage are really good at, they'll do one-to-ones with people. So I think that sometimes, people just need to have a look and dig around for what resources are out there. and also hook up with people like Small Business Britain, BT Skills for Tomorrow, the Open University. All of these places provide really good free webinars, and also sometimes they'll have live events. And once you get in on the, kind of get in on the routine of them sending you their emails, it helps you to stay on top of things, because they maybe will be running a workshop on, how to cope with this. Now Facebook has changed, some algorithm. So it kind of helps you by proxy stay on top of what you're doing. But again, I think that sometimes, people will think that it's such a huge kind of mountain that they have to climb on their own, where in actual fact there are lots and lots of resources out there that you can that you can do. For example, and I'm going to give a little bit of a plug, I hadn't planned to do this, the Small and Mighty program. Have you heard of that, Jess?
I have. It's brilliant.
Have you done it?
No, no, I'm looking
I'm
into it.
It is really, really good. I think it starts on April the 15th or something like that. I just shared an email that came in this morning with all of my sellers, because again, that goes through, I think it's maybe 6 weeks, and they pick different topics and they get experts in, but that comes with a little Facebook group whilst it's running. So if you've got any questions about what they've taught you on that day, you can go and ask the questions, and the subject expert who's done the talk comes in and will answer the questions. And again, that's free. And when I did it, I got to go to the House of Lords at the end of it to celebrate finishing the course. So that's kind of good PR as well. But yeah, I think all of those kind of things that you can access free are brilliant. And lots of people, you see them kind of on TikTok and Facebook that will charge you, X amount to learn lots of things. But, honestly, there's so much free stuff out there. You probably don't need to pay for a lot of it.
Yeah. And the connections that you make are brilliant. That's why we're chatting now, because we are both part of Small Business Saturday, which is we're in a Facebook group. And then that's how I found you. And I thought, oh, there's somebody that used to be in the Navy that's a Navy spouse as well. I gotta get her on my podcast because she's amazing. Um, let's talk about, now that we've talked about Small Business Saturday, obviously we need to talk about Small Business Sunday. You have had a very exciting event recently where you were the speaker. Tell me all about that.
I have. I mean, it's a bit crazy. And in fact, so it's from Theopathetus, the dragon from Dragon's Den. And in fact, where I've kind of done my accidental reinvention and all my different businesses, I won. So the Small Business Sunday, for anyone that doesn't know, runs every Sunday. You enter on Twitter or on Instagram. If you Google Theopathetus Small Business Sunday, it'll come up with the website with all the details about what you need to do. But essentially, he picks 6 businesses every week, and then you get to be part of this fantastic kind of club. So I won it originally for my creative business in 2011, and so I was one of the first people to win it. And in fact, at that time, there wasn't an annual event, there wasn't a Facebook group, there wasn't a website, there wasn't anything, and so that was huge for me there, having kind of left the Navy, and most of my kind of my colleagues that had been on a similar path, they're all doing amazing jobs at, with National Air Traffic Services, or going off and managing airports, and I was making cards and keepsake boxes. So actually, for me, it was a huge validation to win this from him in 2011. um the win, when you win it, is for the business, not for you. And so I then needed to win it again for British Crafters, which I did in 2018. And it was quite strange. At the conference in 2019, it was kind of when I was at my sliding doors point with what I was going to do next. And there was a fantastic guy called Sir Tom Hunter, who's a Scottish entrepreneur, really, really inspiring guy. And he came along and did the fireside chat with Theo. And he, honestly, he was speaking, and it was like a proper Hollywood moment. It felt like he was talking to me, and he's saying, if you've got an idea, I can't do a Scottish accent, if you've got an idea and you've got the passion and the drive and the determination to see it through, you've got to do it, because else you spend the rest of your life wondering, what if, what might have happened. And honestly, it was like everyone else faded into the kind of distance. It was like he was just talking to me. And uh, and and that was the point that I decided to do it. And so I turned to the guy next to me, who actually is a seller on the platform now, and I said to him, do you think I could build a platform, like Etsy, but like British and with people like the British Crafters people, because this guy booked the promotion that I did. He's like, hell yeah, if anyone can, you can. And he said, right, I'll sign me up. I'll be a tester. I'll be, and literally, literally within 3 minutes of that fireside chat finishing, I, had my first sign up. So obviously there were kind of lots of iterations there, and I ended up launching the platform that year because I'm quite impatient, efficient. I wanted to catch the Christmas trade, and so then as part of the Small Business Sunday last year, Theopathetis did a competition for all the winners. There's about 4,000 winners, I think, and it was to go and have lunch at Coots with him and all of these kind of top people in from all sorts of different places. It was a round table to do like a kind of state of the nation, what actual small businesses thought about things. And so it was a really long-winded form. And I have to say, I lost the will to live halfway through it. And I thought, no, I'm going to persevere. I'm going to persevere. I did use a bit of AI to fill some of the more complicated bits in. And when I hit send, I remember thinking, there'll be so many people that won't have bothered to do that. When you start filling in a form and it's just too complicated. But anyway, I got picked to go to Coots. So I think that was when I kind of came onto Theo's radar more properly. And we had a fantastic lunch. And he kept saying to me at this table, "What do you think, Susan?" And it was like things that I literally had no opinion on. And I was kind of trying to think on my feet. But as a kind of result of being at Coots, I got invited along to Google headquarters to talk about AI, funnily enough. And it was at that point that I was talking to Jess, one of Theo's team, and she's absolutely amazing. And I was telling her a précis of kind of what I was saying now with the Sir Tom Hunter and stuff. And she's like, "Oh, that's amazing that your idea kind of came from within the SBS conference, that gave you the impetus to do it." And I said, "Oh yeah, it feels like Sir Tom's like been with me all the way. Obviously, he doesn't know it." And she's like, "Oh, maybe would you consider doing a breakout room at the conference, which would be kind of, 30 people. You'd know who it was because they have to book into it." I'm like, yeah, I can do that. I can do that. 'Cause I'm thinking, I've I've briefed air crew. I've kind of done stuff like that. And anyway, then I got the email saying, would I consider talking on the main stage? And I'm like, oh, okay, okay. And yeah, and then it became 20 minutes and then 25 minutes with Q&A. And literally I had never stood on a stage with a microphone ever. And I thought, wow, in for a penny, in for a pound. But I'm talking about flying my flag, that's really flying the big flag. So yeah, it was massive. It's kind of consumed like most of the year up to the event. I rehearsed it so many times. I think my kids actually know they could probably have done it. They could have subbed in for me because I had kind of learned everything. And yeah, it was fantastic. And actually, the feedback I've got has been amazing. And I started it off with a thing where I said, hello, welcome to my office. It's 2006. And then I had a Harrier taking off a ski jet, which nobody was expecting because I think they were expecting me to talk about crochet kits and art and stuff. So yeah, it was fantastic being able to tell my story, and people cried in the audience and stuff, because I think that the a lot of the reasons for why I've done stuff is because there's been a problem, and so, I really started my first business because it was so bleak being in a married quarter, not knowing anybody, with my husband being away, and then all of the other bits I think people resonated with. But at the very end, Theo came on, and obviously I'm really happy because I'd survived. And amazingly, I sounded like a speaker because I didn't know. Sometimes you get like that catchy bit in your throat when you're nervous. I had no idea whether when I spoke I might sound like that, but I didn't. It was fine. I didn't fall over. It was fantastic. And he said, "Oh, it just makes him so proud that I'm like one of his, one of his like SBS winners." And also that Sir Tom Hunter had been part of the thing. And I said, "Oh, it's so funny because like he literally has no idea, and he's been so apart." And he said, "Oh, well, that's actually where you're wrong. I've got a message for you." And it went to a VT. I'll send it to you, Jess. It was Sir Tom Hunter saying, "Hello, Susan. I'm really glad." And some of my team said people were sobbing, because there's like about 30 British craft house sellers that have also won SBS, and they said there were people around them like proper sobbing. I was just grinning like a Cheshire cat because I was really chuffed to have got to the end of the presentation and kind of been credible, but B, the fact that this guy, this amazing, knighted entrepreneur, had taken the time to do this video for little old me, was really good. So yeah, that was completely crazy. And then I came off stage, I was given a glass of champagne, and it's like, oh my God, what just happened there? But that it really is like my takeaway, or there were a few takeaways from it, but one of the takeaways was to say yes to the opportunity. And when I was stood there with my glass of champagne off stage, if ever there was I'm so glad that I said yes. It would have been much easier to
Mm.
say no. But yeah, no, it was a bit mad.
But you were petrified, weren't you? You were really frightened to do it because we had
Well,
a few comments with each other.
yeah, I mean, I just didn't. So I did the NatWest Accelerator last year, and you have to stand up and give a 60-second pitch about your business. And when I did that, I get like a really bad kind of anxiety, like a red rash up my neck and my face. And I've always had that, like, from when I was a young officer, doing my first ever presentations and things. And my voice was like, when you talk, when you're nervous and you just don't sound right. And so I genuinely didn't know if I was going to be okay or not. And Julie Begbie, who I think I also met through the Small Biz 100, I did an hour like session. She did an hour with me on kind of preparing and things to do to make sure that squeaky person wasn't me. And in fact, I looked at getting a coach, like a public speaking coach, because for me, I just wanted to like smash it out of the park, and I didn't want to be forever thinking, oh, I could have done it so much better. But I absolutely couldn't afford any of the coaches. There was somebody actually who used to work with my husband, sort of ex-military, and I got mates rates, but it was like almost what I pay myself a month, like for an hour. Like, yeah, that's not in my budget. But I am, as a slight side, I'm doing an MA at the moment at the University of Portsmouth, just over 2 years in digital marketing. And so I have a tutor there. And so I contacted my tutor and said, I don't suppose there's anyone at the university that might be able to help me. And this amazing woman called Helen Thompson Whiteside, genius. She met with me every week for like 4 weeks. And the presentation went from being on post-its to me knowing it. And the last session, we went to a huge lecture theatre in Portsmouth where I was kind of delivering it, and she was like bobbing around in the back of the room so that I would project all over the room. And we even did we even like practiced my walk on to because Theo they asked what music I wanted to walk on to. I mean, what where do you start with that? And in the end, I said to them, you choose, and they chose Gabrielle, Dreams Do Come True, and actually it worked really well. So on, in the lecture theatre at the uni, she was kind of singing it, and I was walking on to practice just the kind of the walking on the stage thing. um but yeah, it was massive, and I still have to pinch myself that I've done it. They've sent me the whole VT through this week actually, and I've sat and watched it once, and I thought, do you know what? That's all right. But I'm so glad because actually I won. Did you go to the Blue Tie Ball last
No,
year with Small Biz 100?
no,
I
I've always
won. I won the Francesca Kemp Award at the Blue Tie Ball, and you must go to one if you get the chance. They have these dodgy blue cocktails. I do not recommend them because I had had so many blue cocktails, and we were kind of, they were doing the talk and everything, and there's this great girl who I've known from a few circles, and they were doing like smaller awards and stuff, and we were like chatting and drinking, and then they were doing the announcement for the final award, and she said, I think this is you. And I'm like, what? She said, listen. And then we're listening to like, and she's done this and she's done that, she's done that. I'm like, oh my God. And actually I had heels on and a dress that was too tight and I'd had all these blue cocktails. And all of a sudden I'm up on the stage accepting this award and doing like a speech. And I've lost nearly 2 stone since then because I hated how I looked. And also obviously drinking before you're speaking is not a good idea. But I'm so glad that I did that because I think that 2 stone heavier, I wouldn't have been so happy with my kind of performance at the ICC. But just sorry, I'm rambling on a bit now. But Small Business Britain, do you know that they got me to Downing Street? So
Yes,
with
yes.
with
How
the
is about Downing Street?
with the Christmas market. So I had a phone call from Downing Street saying, "Would you like to be part of the Downing Street festive market? Oh, by the way, it's in 2 weeks' time." At that point, I had no idea that Small Business Britain had put my name forward, and they had 2 places, and they'd offered one to me. I just got this random call from this person on from Downing Street, and they called on a Friday afternoon, and it had gone to my answer phone. And when I phoned back, they weren't there, and I spent the whole weekend thinking as a wind up that nobody's, and I was googling Christmas festive, and they'd had a food fair before, but they hadn't had like a festive market, but it was genuine. And yeah, I had to kind of pull in all of my ex-military skills to basically get an online platform to become an actual stall outside Downing Street. And I've got the biggest kind of big backdrops and pull-up banners. Downing Street lent me the stall because I didn't have a stall. And yeah, it was mental. And I met the Prime Minister and we got there. And because Downing Street were providing my stall, other people had brought their own kind of shells if they do it all the time. They said, just unload all your stuff on the pavement and go and park your car. And my husband's like, you do know we're opposite number 10. I mean, like literally where the press stand, like, and I'm dumping all of this stuff on the floor in Downing Street. But even putting in Downing Street's like postcode into my sat nav here in Hampshire, right, off we go. Driving down Horse Guards Parade and turning in, just yeah, random off the scale. But I think again a kind of a good example of how, by doing the Small Business Britain stuff, by being part of the Small Biz 100, that opportunity kind of came my way, and all the things that have happened since then. And it would have been really easy to say, no, I'm a virtual platform. I just can't do this. And then we raffled off because I knew it'd be so hard to post everything back to all the sellers. They sent it with the agreement that it could become a raffle prize for charity, and we raised £4,000 for Action for Children on the back of it. So yeah, bit crazy.
So many things to be proud of. I have also been lucky enough to go to number 10 a couple of times on the military side of things. And my dad, who says very little, my dad, he's not a big talker, but I sent him the photo of me outside number 10, and you must have had a lot of photos outside number 10, probably with the Christmas tree. And he said, this is so impressive. You must remember this because the heads of state have stood here. Amazing people have stood here. Winston Churchill was here. Barack Obama was there last week. Um, and it's a big celebratory thing. And it's so interesting to think that at one point you were out of the Navy, a military partner in a married quarter, lonely with a couple of children. What would the Susan that you are now say to the previous one that was just sort of a little bit lost?
I think that, and I have actually given this advice to people that are leaving, is to try and build up a support network before you leave. So I think that, obviously my solution to not having that network was to create one, but the internet was quite new then. Whereas now, things like exactly what you do, Jess, that people can be part of. And so then that's a seamless transition. So rather than, when I moved from Somerset to Hampshire, I left all of my groups behind. But of course, virtual groups just move with you. And I know that in COVID, the Facebook hub, people said that was the first place that they checked into to see how people were getting on, to see what was going on, and that was people in the Orkneys and Italy, and it just kind of brings you together. So I think it would probably be to try and build up and get a support network for yourself, and recognize that you've got a huge kind of change coming, and to try and fill those gaps so that the chasm's not so big.
Yeah, and you're not alone. It's really important. So I have this new, I've just thrown in a new question for this podcast series because we, in the last few series, I've always asked people who they want to talk to, who they think I should interview on this podcast series. And the default answer is normally the MOD. If you had a group of high flyers in the MOD, policymakers, people that make decisions, knowing your experience of military life, knowing your experience running your own business, what would you say to like the big choosers in the MOD that you think could make a difference to people in the military community?
I think it's just recognizing the importance of communication. And I think for me, I'd like to think that it's got a bit better, but certainly for me, when my husband was deployed, there was nothing, and I have no idea actually. Maybe there are Facebook groups and WhatsApp groups now, and maybe people communicate better. But for me, when he sailed off to the Adriatic for 7 months, that was it, and you didn't get any communication from the ship. You didn't, you couldn't even, back then there weren't even mobile phones. It was really sporadic. So I think that, to communicate with people, and to realize that, I was a divisional officer when I was serving, and so many people leave the military because their spouse isn't happy. So I think, to understand the importance of making a happy family makes for a happy forces, server. And I think that, sometimes they can lose sight of that. And obviously the person that's serving, it is key to the military operation, but without them having the support at home, and without them wanting them to carry on serving, they undoubtedly won't serve as long as they would have done. But I think sometimes they lose their way slightly in realizing the importance. But I think that something that would be quite interesting, that I'm exploring at the moment, is how when people leave the service, they're channeled into what they did before, because I think there's a whole opportunity, and the transferable skills of people serving. To become entrepreneurs, to set up their own businesses. I think that it's just, if you're an aircraft maintainer, when you do your resettlement, they'll be channeling you to be a aircraft maintainer for Bristow's, or a civilian company. Whereas I think that, I think in a way you have a whole pot of transferable skills that you kind of almost don't know that you've got, because everybody else has got them. So I'm contemplating, contacting them, because actually when I did my resettlement, there was nothing. Nobody said, what about starting a business? What about doing something different? But they don't do that in schools either. My daughter's, kind of going through the whole kind of, what's next. And again, there's nobody there saying, what about doing something for yourself? It's all very, traditional roots. So I'm not quite sure that answered your question, but yeah, I don't know. I do think that they need to kind of look after the whole being, really. But and look after you, because you're doing so much actually to kind of fulfill that by bringing people together.
Yeah, it feels like a no-brainer to me because I live it every day. Um, but yeah, I think that there's a knowledge gap missing there. I think operational effectiveness and the happiness of military families is very happily combined together and very cost effective. Look after the families. I think it was that you recruit the serving person, but you retain the families or something like that. It makes sense to me. But so hopefully they are listening. Um, Thank you so much. I've barely said anything because I have soaked it all up and I knew this was going to be a good episode and I knew that I was going to learn a lot from you. And it's so inspirational and I'm hugely grateful because you must be very busy. If I am interested in joining the British Craft House or if I wanted to find you on social media, where can I hunt you out?
So we are British Craft House everywhere, apart from Twitter, where we're British Crafting, because it was just too difficult to change over the title. The website is just thebritishcrafthouse.co.uk, and yeah, we're everywhere. Badly on TikTok, but we can be we can be found everywhere. And if anybody's creative and is interested in kind of applying to join, there's a little apply now button at the top of the website. And just really quickly, and I haven't mentioned this at all, I actually have like a second business. It's a bit like the British Craft House. It's called Buy Indie, and the website is buyindie.co.uk. And the British Craft House is application only. We do turn down quite a lot of people if the jewelry has to have the major component handmade by the person selling it, which is slightly different to everyone else. Buy Indie is much more relaxed, but it also has a community sitting behind it. Quite new, only launched about 18 months ago. So yeah, that's kind of to fulfill, because I feel really bad when people apply and they don't get accepted, because I'm all about supporting all small businesses. So this is kind of a secondary one. And we've had some people come on to Buy Indie and learn all the skills that they need and then come across to the British Craft House. So yes, I'm there as well. And Buy Indie is just Buy Indie across social media as well. And on LinkedIn, if anyone's on LinkedIn, I know lots of in fact, my LinkedIn is more military people than anything else, actually. I'm just Susan Bonnar on LinkedIn. So yeah, it'd be good to connect with anybody. And if anybody's interested in joining and wants to have a chat, then I'm quite happy to jump on a call as well. It's one of the things that I try and kind of put across, that unlike these big corporations like Etsy, Amazon Handmade, with hundreds of thousands of people, you can't get to a real person. Well, it's me. So I'm really happy to chat to people if they want to talk through anything.
I love that. Real humans. We need more of that. Before we
Yeah.
finish, is there anything else that you'd like to add or say?
No. It's been really nice to come on. And it's funny actually, the whole kind of military spouse thing. I don't think I ever really felt like a military spouse, even when I was one. But it's just such a powerful thing, isn't it? And actually, I've got some amazing friends from when I've lived in quarters, and the quarters that we lived in here in Hampshire, lots of army people. So yeah, it's fascinating. But I think it's brilliant what you're doing, Jess. So keep on doing it, and you need to win Small Business Sunday. So I'm going to be rattling your cage now, and I'll be looking out every week for your entry.
Yeah, pester me because I
I
every
will.
year I'm like, it looks so good, and lots of Millspace go, and it looks just brilliant. I'm green with envy, and then I never do the posts, and then get slightly grumpy that I've not won, which makes no sense. So I'm
No,
going to do that now. That's my afternoon job. Um,
brilliant.
it's been honestly, I have loved it. I just love talking about business and inspirational people, and when it touches military life, that's fun too. But I know that this will make such a difference to a lot of people, and I know that your story is it's relatable because we have all been there. Well, the majority of it has been of well, the majority of us have been there, sat in the slightly miserable Mary Quarter, but knowing that it's just good fun journey. So thank you so much, Susan. It has genuinely been fab.
Thank you. Thanks so much for inviting me on.